young adult marks a very specific and independent switch for most adolescents. Reading books with mature themes, young people are able to understand topics that may be difficult for them and are able to explore issues or find solidarity where they might otherwise have been alone. The overall thesis of my senior research is that young adult literature is a strong aid in the process of a young person's growing up, and its legitimacy as a genre should be recognized as it serves to tackle difficult issues such as sexuality, loss, and religion. For the purposes of this presentation, I will focus on the way that religion is handled in young adult literature by looking at its current presence, examples of its inclusion, as well as its benefits to readers. Literature that is specifically catered to young adults is a relatively new phenomenon. Up until the early 20th century, there wasn't really a distinction made between literature for children and literature for adults. As the genre has evolved, there's been an increased sense of realism and focus on issues that are pertinent to the young people. A main purpose of my research was to advocate for the right of young people to read books with mature content, as well as the necessity for reading for young people in general. I focused specifically on the ways that sex, loss, and religion are handled, but clearly those aren't the only issues that young people face. By allowing young people the opportunity to read about situations that they or their peers may face, they will be better prepared to handle these situations as they come. Giving the opportunity to live out situations in a safe, fictional setting is a healthy way of emerging into an adult. Now to specifically look at religion's current status. In a survey done by the National Study of Youth and Religion, involving over 3,300 young people between the ages of 13 and 17, it was found that 80% identified as Jewish, Mormon, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, or Protestant. 82 said that they attended a local church group. 71 described having a close relationship with God. And 65 claimed to pray alone several times a week. Despite this, 89.2% of protagonists in young adult bestsellers are not affiliated with any religion whatsoever. Others are wondering why this is taboo in the genre. Just by filling up a simple Google search, one can find titles such as Don't Talk About What? Religion's Place in YA Fiction, and Thou Shalt Not, Religion and Teen Books, and Are You There, God? The Mysterious Disappearance of Religion in YA Fiction. Though difficult to find, there are some mainstream young adult texts that have succeeded in including the power of religion within their pages. A few examples of this are Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Does My Head Look Big in This? By Rhonda Abdel Fattah, Sarah Zara's Once Was Lost, and Ella Compton's Burned. In Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is a sixth grader named Margaret who, amidst dealing with puberty, boys, and finding friends, is of age that she understands that her mom is a Christian and her dad is Jewish. She's pulled both ways, with her paternal grandfather calling her my Jewish girl and her mother's side claiming she's Christian. She has to decide for herself which one she believes. In Does My Head Look Big in This? A young woman has to decide how actively she wants to live out her Islamic faith, and whether she is able to accept the way that others will perceive her in light of her choices. This book does a good job of showing how important religion is in connection with the sense of self-actualization of young people. In Ellen Hopkins' Burnt, the protagonist is a Mormon teenage girl named Patton. She's the daughter of an alcoholic, misogynistic father and a passive mother, both of whom use God's word as a way to fuel their selfish practices. In an attempt to punish Patton after he finds out she has a boyfriend, her father sends her away to live with his sister. While she's there, she discovers the God of her aunt. This God is loving and welcoming, and the complete opposite of God that her parents claim to follow. In Sarah Zara's Once Was Lost, there's a tale of a young Sam who loses faith in God after her dad spends more time at church than at home, and her mom receives a DUI. Sam has to come to terms with the bad in the world and decide that if God can exist in light of that. A quote states, "I was wishing I could climb through the ceiling and over the stars until I can find God, really see God, and know once and for all that everything I've believed my whole life is true and real. Or not even everything, not even half. Just the part about someone or something bigger than myself who doesn't lose track. I want to believe stories, that there's really someone who would search the whole mountainside just to find that one lost thing that he loves and bring it home." Such a clear crisis of faith is refreshing to see in mainstream young adult literature, by an author whose books do not always contain spiritual themes. The book unabashedly demonstrates the struggle for faith in light of a difficult world. Writers' desire not to alienate readers may be a driving factor for religion's exclusion. However, drawing from examples of texts that do it well, a case can be made for why the theme should be included more frequently. YA fiction should include relevant issues, and understanding religion's place in a young person's life is certainly relevant. Ray Carson, author of the fantasy series Crown of Ember, states, "I have a tremendous respect for teens who navigate the quagmire that is modern religion. If there's any message in my books, I want it to be that it's okay to ask questions." Although Carson herself considers herself an atheist, she still sees the major benefit of religion in fiction and includes it in her own books positively. Additionally, books often work to explore the myths that cause people to make certain unfound judgments. Books including religion should be no different. The telling of a story should be honest, and not aimed solely to please, but to challenge as well. Aaron Hartzler, author of Rapture Practice, an autobiography about a young man growing up in an ultra-religious household, where movie theaters were out of the question and Amy Grant was considered too risque, states people should be careful not to assume that all religious people are anything. He elaborates by saying that not all religious people are hypocrites. Everyone lives out their faith in different ways, and we should be careful not to judge based on our perceptions of them. By including religion in a variety of ways, books help young people to be more understanding, more prone to asking questions, and better suited to intelligent discussion. The goal of having religion in books is not necessarily conversion, but instead, understanding and ability to recognize that people who believe things differently than us are still real people. Coming from a Christian standpoint, I believe this helps me both to solidify my own faith and understand others' point of view. There's a quote I use in a separate section of my senior research, and I think it applies well here. It's from the authors Roger Sutton and Martha Caravano, and it says, "While a novel say about drug abuse will give him information and points to consider, it will not get him high. It also won't scare him straight either. Books don't work this way." I see this as applying with religion. Just because a non-Christian reads about Christianity in a novel doesn't mean they will be converted. And just because a Christian reads a book about a Jehovah's Witness doesn't mean they will walk away from their faith either. It simply presents a new perspective. I know that what the Bible holds is the truth, and I hope that young people find that same truth as they read the stories involving Christian themes and characters. I also hope that Christian young people reading books about other religions learn to be more loving and are better able to engage with those that are different than them. Religion's place in young adult literature should be as active a role and presence as other difficult topics. Adolescents have questions growing up, and surely religion is a part of this. Its inclusion presents a way of thinking that people can relate to or that they may not be familiar with. Either way, excluding religion from books for teens is a gross disservice and an inaccurate portrayal of what it means to grow up. Religion presents people struggling for answers, wondering about authority, and trying to find their place in the world. And nothing sounds more quintessentially young adult than that.
As a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter because it was witchcraft and other religions and stuff. What's your stance on things like that?
I wasn't allowed to watch or read Harry Potter either, and I never did because I'm kind of like a goody two-shoes, so I didn't obey my parents. I think that if you approach your parents, if I would have really asked and said, I really would like to read this, I really want to understand, maybe my mom probably would have read it with me. I know that Professor Schmidt does that a lot with her own daughters, where if her daughters are reading something, she'll read it alongside them. I think that it's helpful still to read these texts, even if they may contain things, but it does take a level of maturity to understand, okay, this is fiction, this is not what I should be doing, or to try to get the good out of it. And even from Jenna's presentation yesterday, there's obviously good in the Harry Potter books, and I can see that, but just understanding the difference between this is how I should act and this is how I shouldn't.
Sarah, this is one of those questions I should have thought of sooner, but just thought of it as you were speaking today. You've run across several works where religion has been dealt with substantially. Is there anything you know of where an author has brought characters of multiple faiths together and sort of let them do things, dialogue? Anybody tried that yet?
In the first one that I mentioned is the Judy Blue book.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the parents are Jewish and Christian, so they dialogue in that book. And then even more recently, with John Green, he's a super popular author right now. He wrote Open Our Stars. I don't know if you know what that is. He wrote another book called The Abundance of Catherines. And in that book, the main protagonist, the young man, he is Jewish and his friend is not. And so they kind of dialogue back and forth. It's more taken in a joking manner, but it still presents some, so that would probably be the main one that I see. Adam?
About individual specific faith being depicted in these stories, is there any chance that they could be, that you would either like them or not based on how they're depicted or whoever placed them in the story knows about such individuals that
Yes.
range from individuals of Christianity to Judaism to Islamic?
Definitely. I think that a lot of times, previously, a lot of the inclusions of religion were Christian parents that were kind of goofy, or people that overstepped their bounds and they were hypocrites. So that's why I'm saying we should include it more positively or more different sides. Even in Aaron Hartzler's book, he wrote a book called Rapture Practice, which I mentioned at the end. And it's an autobiography about him growing up, and his parents love him, and they truly believe and try to live out what their faith is. However, he doesn't agree with them, and as the reader's reading, it's obvious that we're supposed to see the error of their ways. But even as he's writing this, he still loves his parents, and he ends it on a positive note saying, we're spending time together, I just want to be with my family. And to this day, he talks to his mother, but he doesn't talk to his father. I've read interviews with him after. And it's still a hard situation, but he portrayed them in that light because he wanted us to see, just because they're religious, they're still people. So I think having the different ways of showing people that are religious, even within one book, showing the negatives and positives, is helpful. Yeah.
Do you think that if a book series were to be made that included these things, included religion, do you think that they would sell as well as books like Harry Potter, like Hunger Games, Divergent? From a marketing standpoint, do you even think that maybe that's the reason why people stay away from it?
I think that's probably one of the major reasons they do now is they don't want to alienate readers. But I think that's wrong, because if we're writing books about suicide and drug abuse and homosexuality, and those are issues that we face, then other people are also facing issues of discovering where they fit in with religion, what if they believe what their parents. So I would hope that they would start to more, and I think that if more popular authors such as Sarah Zard, who's written a book called Sweethearts, which is a bestseller that includes nothing about religion, if they include it later on, and even John Green, who is a popular author, and he's starting to include some religion, even in Open Our Stars, he talks about it a little bit. If they start to, it'll kind of get the ball rolling, and hopefully people will be less afraid and more apt to include it. Dr. Kim?
I think we need a little bit more careful thought on that, because we showed the statistics saying over 80% of these people identify as being part of a particular religion and praying several times a week on their own.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that marketing idea, in terms of alienating an audience. There's 80% of people who claim to have this religion. So if you have religion, it shouldn't alienate the audience, unless people who have those beliefs themselves find it boring to read these books. I don't know, could you kind of sort through the issue, like where would that factor come in? Is it the publishers, who are biased on one end saying, we think we don't want to, publish these books, or is it the audience itself not wanting to buy these books, or is it something in between?
It could be a combination of the two. I think even in that statistic that I gave, the 89.2, it had many religions. So it had Catholicism, Mormonism, Orthodox, which are different. And so I think that if they came from one standpoint, that's where the fear of alienating readers would come from.
But couldn't they just theoretically offer, a buffet of religions religions in their books. I mean, so they don't have to necessarily only publish one kind of book or a book that favors one kind of religion. They could have, you know, multiple characters or multiple authors from different faiths and have them be a series. So, I mean, theoretically, there's a way to go around that issue. So I'm not really sure, you know, if there is some kind of trend where publishers don't want to publish these books, it doesn't match the demographic reality of the research. It's just a limited context. Do you have any further thought on that?
I mean, I haven't like fully researched as to publishers and why they don't include it. I just found the statistics that it's not there. And so I'm kind of, I don't know how to fully answer that with the research.
And then did you do research in the Christian publishing world where they are explicitly looking for fiction, you know, that does favor a Christian point of view? Are they selling well, or are they doing well, or is it, what's the quality of the fiction like?
I started off my research actually as part of that. So the reason why I decided to do religion in my whole presentation was I read Rapture Practice over the summer just for fun. I worked in the library and it was returned, so I read it. And then a lot of times as I was growing up, I would start reading fiction that was like from Family Christian Stores or Limestone Bookstore, and I would see the quality as much less than the quality of books that are aimed at the secular market. And the only author that has any sort of success in the secular market for young adult literature is Melody Carlson, and she does do well. But aside from that, they aren't buying. And even if you go to the library, that's the only book I've been able to find. And it's a series of books. And she is pretty skilled as a writer, but aside from that, it is much less quality, yeah.
In your personal opinion, like kind of knowing what you know now from like your personal experience and the research, why do you believe there's such a hesitation to include religion like in young adult literature? Because like you said earlier, there are heavy duty topics like suicide, sexuality, and everything that young adults are going to ask questions about. And people have no problem like broadcasting that in younger literature. Or in your professional opinion, why do you think there's such a hesitation with bringing religion, and it's just as much, if not more so, a heavy topic?
I mean, it could be in part because of the separation we're supposed to have between our academic career. We're supposed to never be pushing our religion on other people. And so we have to keep it as a private thing when religion isn't always a private thing. It should be a communal thing. And so I think people are afraid, and publishers are afraid to publish these books because they don't want to alienate people. They don't want to have people feeling like they can't pick up their book because, well, I'm not a Mormon, so I'm not going to read this book. And I think that's where the failure comes in. It's just a fear of not having people pick up the book because they think they won't get anything out of it.
All right, thank you very much.